I'm ready whenever the access.
Okay. So everyone's not ready? Co-leader a human community elder in northern Waziristan. We did not know that America existed. We did not know what its geographical location was, how its government operated, what its government was like until America invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. We become victims of Americans. We don't know how they treat their citizens or anything about them. All we know is that they used to support us and now they don't. Now we are always awaiting a drone attack and know it's certain and it's eventual and it will strike us. We're just waiting to hear whose house it will strike, our relatives, our neighbors, or us. We do not know. We're always in fear. Vision is entangled in an oculocentric Western military culture that gazes from nowhere and yet represents everywhere. This is the God trick. These eyes have been perfected through a militarist, capitalist, colonial supremacy to disembodied view, the view from a cyclopean master subject. Drones are a part of this disembodied colonial logic of an us versus them mentality. Drones reinforce the same God trick of a view from everywhere and nowhere that spells an everyday culture. Graham Shaw and October 12 into the discrucial oculocentric Western culture is always entangled in the military culture. The ability to gaze from nowhere and yet represent everywhere. Hairway labels the God trick. This is a perfected military logic and military capitalism, colonial supremacy. What is fundamentally located within the nexus of disembodied advantage according to the cyclopean self-stated the master subject. This disembodied visual logic is perfected through the doctrine of air power, cosmic view that unifies and separates targets from above the skepticism of technology, masters of the world, clean disembodied in a place where nobody dies, according to the logic of us in the sky versus them, and the ground turns capable of performance, sliding digital people to try to system, they begin to reinforce the same old God trick view from somewhere from nowhere. Orbital logics thus spill into the everyday, as thus the pervasive influence of targeting in U.S. culture turns down an aberration for the apex of targeting, cultural targeting zeitgeist, and this age to be selected the cool cursor of crosshair. And discourse surrounding precision warfare, targeted killing, and signature strikes actively produce the deaths of civilian populations by rendering those populations to mere calculations in a computer. They are devoid of political significance for the cyborg soldier. The civilian population becomes stripped of subjectivity. The bodies are rendered feminized, irrational, and supposedly opposed to the rational political thinking necessary for political engagement. Almobius examined this discourse surrounding the cyborg soldier, the drone, Wilcox, and 9. Discourse surrounding precision warfare distinguishes civilians and combatants. Epistemological problem, insufficient vision, surveillance, insufficient intelligence. Epistemology not only produce object knowledge, but also produce unknowns as well, like society comes as well as distinguishing civilians and combatants. Precision warfare not being listed as temporary shortcoming. The progression of increasing knowledge is an actively produced ignorance that difficulties in actively calculating the number of civilian combatant deaths are not a non-reliable system to measure methodological and political issues surrounding these types of numerate causalities. Rather, the result of the discursive system that actively produce the accidental deaths of civilians is unknowable. Precision warfare makes civilian and vigorous, no political significance to a point killing civilians. Key rationale for the development and use of precision weaponry is to do practices of precision warfare that civilians are made killable in the first place. Countries the masculine cyber subjectivity of precision bombers and civilians are considered feminine figures. Transformation of civilian into homicidal is aided by historical link to civilian with the women and feminine individuals and the exclusion of women affiliates and forwards from politics due to the association of women subordinate masculinities and body rationalities opposed to the rational mind deemed essential for distribution of the politics of feminist population. Civilians need protection. They are innocent of the violence of the bodies of civilians are used in relation to the production of cyber subjectivities and military personnel commit violence or for the body video game made by civilians are produced in pathological bodies to deliver dynamic rational calculation of risk management. And the cyborg soldier necessary for this precision bombing exemplifies the God trick of sight, the ability to view from nowhere and everywhere. Drones with GPS and UAVs are used to collect information to substitute for eyes. This disembodied light and neurologic that attempts to transcend the body, which is feminized in contrast to the masculine technology, Wilcox and 9. Precision bombing is dependent on sight technology is human capable to cyborgs precision burns to line Gaza using hands with aesthetic technology sight and GPS, the unavailable vehicles, and the numbers of surveillance to produce the masterfully benign subject precision bombing reduces the illusion of disembodied subjects only to produce a previous view of the world with the power to destroy all the diseases, the distance per se that enables the killing civilians, reduction of masculine cyborg subjectivities, technology, precision bombing here sonified this God trick in various ways. Precision bombing is dependent on sight technology and human capabilities, the increasing clarity of GPS system, supporting greater drive towards accuracy of devastation of risk, narrative mistakes, folding stuff, and contingency parameters. God trick of sight from everywhere as well. Getting GPS system, UAVs, and collect information substitute for eyes, disembodied subjectivity, seemingly divorced from relevant limits of the power. This drone can be submissions of express human capabilities and drones. Most drones remain for 48 hours. Drone remain operational until 5 years. Currently development one-way use of technology work is considered unmanly. Technology is now inscribed in the masculine protector of the feminine person views the latent dream of transcending the body with wars being waged in video screens. And drones are part of the oculocentric logic which renders the world to be made visible and thus to be destroyed. Graham Shaw, October 12. The drones here to use military targeting, apex of military targeting logic, accurate, efficient, and deadly heavy, really age of the world picture. Chow sense metaphysical analysis of content the world has been further predicted to target in the way of becoming events of ferocious. The entire globe is rendered the creative targets to be destroyed so they can be made visible, to seize, to destroy. And Abdul Rahman. Early one morning in September 2011, Abdul Rahman set out from our home in Sana by himself. He went to look for his father, whom he hadn't seen for years. He left a note for his mother explaining that he missed his father and wanted to find him. After asking her to forgive him for leaving without her permission, a couple days after Abdul Rahman left, we were relieved to receive word he was safe and with cousins in southern Yemen, where our family is from. Days later, his father was targeted and killed by American drones in a northern province, hundreds of miles away. After Anwar died, Abdul Rahman called us and said he was going to return home. That was the last time I heard his voice. He was killed 2 weeks after his father. We must affirm the resolution through the opening of non-isomorphic subjects, agents, and territories of stories unimaginable from the vantage point of the cyclopean, self-satiated eye of the master subject. Our affirmation views the resolution as an active object of knowledge. Our affirmation is an embodied view, a view from somewhere, as opposed to a disembodied view from nowhere, the God trick that attempts to perfect knowledge. Creating embodiment of the resolution through use of partial perspectives is key to opening up new situated knowledge is here away in 7. I'm a group of politics of epistemology, location, positioning, situating, partiality, comes down to your physical condition of being heard, being irrational, knowledge, claims are arguing view from the body is always a complex, contradictory, structuring, structure, body versus view from above, from nowhere to this criteria to deciding science, questioning, relativism, dream, science, technology, perfect language, perfect communication, fundamental order, feminism, less science, politics, of maturity, translation, suffering, personally understood, concepts of multiple subject with at least double vision, critical vision, consequent of the critical position, homogeneous, and gender, social space, and dreams are perfectly known to high technology, permanently militarized, scientific productions, and positioning is a God trick, the Star Wars, paradigm of rational knowledge, feminist body exists, fixation is insatiably curious, but the webs of differential positioning, there's no single feminist standpoint, our maps require 2 dimensions of metaphor to ground, our vision, the goals, but every comes to the world of science, rational knowledge, not pretend to disengage from to be everywhere and so nowhere to be free from interpretation, so being represented by being fully self-contained or fully formalizable. Rational knowledge is the process of ongoing critical interpretation among fields of interpreters and decoders. Science becomes the paradigmatic model which contestable to contested science becomes knowledge just gives human agency, responsibility in the realm above the fray, but accountability, responsibility for transformation, solidarity, leaking cacophonous voice of visionary voices that characterize the knowledge of the subjugated displaying of sense, confusing of vision and sight rather than clear distinct ideas become the metaphor for the ground of the rational. We see now knowledge is ruled by flawed essentials, disembodied vision, but those ruled by partial sight and limited voices, impartiality, the sake of connection, unexpected opening, situated knowledge, make possible situated knowledge, so about communities, not isolated individuals. The structure of feminism, objectivity is positioned rationally. Individuals are not present of escaping transcendent limits, i.e., the view from above and joining the partial views and holding voices, collective subject vision, promises, and vision of beings ongoing, finding embodiment living within limits and contradictions of views from somewhere. And the resolution is not a passive object of knowledge, but rather an apparatus of actual production and reproduction embodies another objects of knowledge. Our affirmation is one that affirms the topic as an active, meaning-generating apparatus of bodily production, here away in 7. The apparatus of literary production, matrix of religious literature, born to adapt to understanding, generation, actual production, reproduction of bodies, other objects of value, scientific knowledge, projects which are translated into theological dimensions of facticity and the organic material or cumbersome entity known as the material symbiotic act. This unwieldy term is intended to portray the object of knowledge as active, meaning, generating access to the apparatus of bodily production without playing to be present such objects. The same thing in the finally view determination of what can count as object knowledge, particularly historical juncture bodies of object knowledge of its material symbiotic generative nodes of boundaries, materialized in social interaction, objects of boundary projects of boundary side shift from within boundaries of very tricky boundaries providing contains remains generative production of meaning and boundary side setting boundaries is a risky practice, and affirming situated knowledge doesn't make them innocent. Rather, the inclusion of partial positions fosters critical and interpretive knowledge. These standpoints promise more transforming accounts of the world, here away in 7. To see from below is neither easily learned or unproblematic, even if we naturally inherit the underground terrain of subjugated knowledge. Positions subjugated are not exempt from critical re-examination, decoding, deconstruction, interpretation. The standpoints of subjugated are not innocent positions. They are preferred because, in principle, at least legal denial of critical interpretive core of all knowledge, savvy denial of modes of repression, forgetting and disappearing as ways of nowhere, and claiming to be seen comprehensively because subjugated to have a chance to see the God trick. Therefore, blinding illumination subjugated standpoints are preferred because they are promised more adequate, sustained, objective, transformational, or transforming accounts of the world. And we need situated knowledge to intervene and dismantle the production of drones as an autonomous and exceptional solution. Grave Shaw, Actor, and 12. The relationship about the discussion drone warfare is meant to drone in its battlefield objectified targets rather than the relationship between the teams of technicians operating as drone into agents of American empire and suspecting by surveillance slaughter on the ground of the colonial Pakistan and critical geography must therefore intervene and dismantle the production and maintenance of the drone fascist product like with the work of feminist geographies, geopolitics, and reinsert into disavowed corporate reality. Much of the military discourse is spoiled by the iron cast of paternalism, feminized fatah, rescued by masculine U.S. forces, not mentioned the human pain and suffering objects, humanities, technology, and managers, unfolding stories of our lives and autonomy and exceptional status of the drone is always already a production. The Obama administration is telling the drone is a magical solution to the war and tears of fetishization includes its unbearable humanness. And these narratives disturb and disrupt the hegemonic gaze of drone warfare and its legitimization. We must frustrate the imperialist gaze by embodying experiences instead of abstracting them into a statistical model and an algorithmic calculation. Sean 13. The near possibility of travel to Fatah by journalists and visitors outside or inside Pakistan. These reports give a rare glimpse of the life of the ground shared service of women, children, men of Fatah, disturb the hegemonic foreign policy gaze and refocus the lens of the White House and geographical imagination. Drone warfare, Pakistan is linked to war on terror, more journalists, not a universal experience. These stories are important for rehumanizing the abstract discourse and security strategy, the bureaucratic space and disposition matrix. And in one story, the Taliban visited the residence of a man named Wad Khan and demanded lunch. The father reluctantly consented, fearing reprisal if he refused the fighters. The very next day, our house was hit. My only son, Khalik, was killed. I saw his body, completely burned. Over to Press X.
Why is something that is rendered visible by the Enlightenment something that can be destroyed? Or why does the Enlightenment destroy things that which are visible?
Our evidence defines it as being an Enlightenment logic, but our argument is not that inherently Enlightenment understandings of vision are necessarily problematic. That might be true, but it's not an argument that we've made so far. The argument in relation to Enlightenment types of vision is an argument that quotes Chow. It says that the metaphysical sort of targeting through a view from nowhere, i.e. a subjectivity that's collected through a disembodied way of viewing and targeting the world, is inevitably a kind of targeting that is a targeting to destroy. It's a targeting.
Do we attack all targets?
I guess it depends on what you mean by attack and by we.
I mean, does the cycloptic gaze or the structure of the United States federal government attack everything that it thinks is a target?
I don't think that's something that we can know. Like, we can't go back in history and be like, we have historically attacked everything. Because part of our argument is that.
I mean, sure. There are like things that the United States currently targets that it does not attack.
Our argument is, I think our response to that would be that you are viewing the attack as too focused on a particular. I don't know what you're viewing as an attack, I guess, which is my second question, which matters because our argument is that this sort of targeting is an attack in and of itself. So
what is the implication of the targeting? The attack that is targeting in itself.
There's a couple of implications to targeting.
And it's not just in and of itself.
Right,
so
and I'm going to say the first one, which is the most obvious, and I think maybe the most relevant to your question, which is that the targeting logic, as per our Gramscian actor and just our Shaw evidence, indicates that it renders these populations into mere calculations, which are Wilcox evidence gives the internal link to the impact that leads to annihilation of the other.
Okay.
There's other articulations to it.
Sure. What would what would the situated subjects say about drones? Or are there some situated subjects that would support drones?
There very well could be. We don't prescribe what situated subjects would say. That's the sort of criticism of an abstract understanding that we're talking about. What we do, however, is present the partial perspectives of people who are actually on the ground in neo-colonial Fatah and other places that were targeted and are continually targeted by the sort of drone logic, and we think that it's important to present their perspectives, even if there might be other people who like it. That's also a Haraway argument about how the sort of perspectives are not innocent, and they're certainly conflicting and contradictory. That's part of what makes them powerful and able to be sort of, I don't want to say liberatory, but transformative.
Okay, I got one more question. If the Enlightenment Project is some sort of all-seeing cycloptic eye...
I had to stop you there because the answer to your first question was that that's not our contention, is that rather the cyclopean self-satiated eye is an Enlightenment logic, not that Enlightenment logic inevitably creates those things.
Okay, well, if those things both exist in the status quo, how does the Enlightenment cause forgetting, which is the internal link to your policy failure argument from your Haraway evidence?
No, our Haraway evidence does not say the Enlightenment causes forgetting.
Okay, it should be working its way to its 3 alpha dimensions.
Well, and I just got it, so it's good.
Is this your setup here?
This is Ricardo's setup.
Are we being live streamed right now?
Oh shit.
Live stream.
Where are we being live streamed to?
All
Where are we going?
Gotta tell my mom.
Anybody wants to do it on the internet?
Oh, that's is it just like a public link or whatever?
Oh my gosh.
I prefer dead streaming to live streaming, thank you.
I'm gonna call myself a celebrity now.
Yeah.
Tucking it straight.
I just tell all my professors if they ask me about the tournament. You could have watched me while I was debating at the tournament. I was on a live stream.
Kind of a big deal.
That was so funny when I started debating in college. Like, none of my family cared in high school. My mom cared, but none of my family cared in high school. I got to college and they're like, why don't you have videos for us? You come. You do it.
She won't get that stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff.
Luckily, Armo is basically the panopticon, and so...
I know, I felt so bad at GSU because he tried seriously 4 times during prelims to videotape all 4 of our AFROMs, but just weird stuff kept happening.
Armo's not a very effective panopticon.
Nonetheless.
He could be watching you right now.
I'd say watch his face.
Fair.
Did you both skip that?
Yeah.
Pardon?
People at home?
Yeah. First off, locality, the environment should have actually the restriction of the president's more powers authority. That his authority is explicitly delegated by Congress through Justice 13. The president is now by one more power that's commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief authority does AC. The president is the head of the military command. Once Congress has activated the power of the immediate war, he's the commander-in-chief county contemporaneous with the president might be a Mr. Arrest war, perhaps abetting a presidential expansion is appointed by the commentators employ the term such as inherent authority. There are two violations. First, the affirmative only talks about drone tech, not a targeted killing authority. Second, there Gay's arguments about surveillance drones as related to the resolution is hobby shop RC plans. And two, advantages versus community. The resolution is the only common reference point for the debate community, regardless of resource disparity, debate, the backgrounds, etc. Affirmation can be informed by any literature basis or methodologies, but they have to, but they should center around the resolution itself, and which is necessary for a dialogue, which prerequisites to engagement and high and game. Debate games are based on pre-designed scenarios to interact and communicate with the domain-specific game-based state. All forms of communication and culture are subject to the centrifugal and centrifugal forces and centripetal forces. The attempt to impose one truth while the centrifugal force imposes a range of truths in a dialogical debate. Also embodies centrifugal and centripetal forces. Centripetal forces are determined by the rules of the game open and goals represented centrifugal elements and create virtually endless possibilities. For research game facilitation requires a balance between narrow rules and two broad possibilities and interpretations of the game's centrifugal orientation. Duality manifests itself in the dynamic between monological and dialogical discourse. With monological Socrates dialogues, the teacher never learns, the discourse becomes the monologized when someone who knows instructs someone who's ignorant of where a thought is affirmed by authority. Dialogic is a normative ideal against the monologism. The most important tool should be dialogue in and of itself, and dialogue is critical to affirming any value. Failure to define all the terms of the resolution operate within its bounds. The road to operation devolves into authoritarianism more than form. Teachers find it difficult to avoid divorce of authority. We are prone to think that ourselves have fighting oppression. It takes work to realize that we may be a precedent of overbearing maximum rebellion against authority produces greater intolerance for the skills of refuting an oppressive power, not openness, self-skepticism, or dialogue. Kill herself. The consciousness was precisely the irrelevant most of totalitarianism. The gulag we work structured by rebels. Oppression comes from the rebellious psychology unless they are cultivated by dialogue. If ideological becoming is a struggle in which one is achieved truth, the rebels may proceed an ongoing spiral of intolerance. The second is a style debate over a controversial point of action creates argumentative stasis that is key to avoiding a devolution of debate into four strangers talking past each other's congregate. Debate is a means of settling differences, so there must be a common interest if everyone is in agreement. There's no need to debate where there's no clash, there's no debate. Debate cannot produce effective decisions without clear indication of the question in general, or even may occur about the broad topic of immigration. How many do they take jobs? Participation in this debate is not likely to be productive without a focus on particular question. Demarcating sides in a controversy must be stated clearly. Vague understanding results in unfocused deliberation of poor decisions evidenced by the failure of Congress to make progress in the immigration debate, but without a focus on their discussions, they can agree with the sorry state of education without finding any points of clarity or solutions or grab session would follow. But if a precise question is posed, a more profitable area of discussion is opened up simply by placing a focus on search for a concrete solution to have a productive. Finish this one though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. To have a productive debate which facilitates the effective decision making by placing limits on the decision, the basis of the argumentation should be clearly defined. If it was merely about homelessness or global warming, we are likely to have an interesting discussion, but not to establish a profitable basis for argument. The statement of resolve that the pen is minor distorted is debatable, yet it fails to provide a basis for clear argumentation. Although we now have general subjects, it's still too broad. The basis for argumentation can be phrased as debate proposition, not to say that a debate should completely avoid creative interpretation, that good debates cannot grow over competing interpretations of the controversy. In fact, these sorts of debates may be very engaging. The point is that the debate is best facilitated by focus on a particular point of difference in decision making is the most portable skill we use it everywhere. And if our interpretations have beneficial, If our interpretations are beneficial, it means that there's no reason to vote negative. If the case is so true that T justifies the resolution, T's are still signified by F next to the resolutions they require measuring for affirmation next to cap. Class is the driver of all social and existential conditions, allowing emancipation from the status quo, modes, reduction, connecting, form, human freedom, class shapes the economic, the social, and the cultural resources remains visible because it is diversity of culture, absorbed in difference, obscured by inequality, or explained by philosophical arguments. One desires to know what one can desire. One desire is always determined before the one desires is determined by material class conditions, individuality, and singularity are missing class societies. Class is the negation of freedom. Class is the materiological life, and determines how people live and think. Class is a relation of owning, a relation to labor under capitalism. Labor is not free. Labor becomes an object that exists outside the life that which is confronted with hostile and alien. The worker alienation itself because the production activity is active alienation. Alienation activity. The questions that enable humans to build their world are marginalized. Life itself appears to be the only means to life. Alienation from the product of one's labor is alienation from other people. In the class structures is a retaining of human freedom and emancipation from alienated labor is emancipation of humans from this. So because of all relations of servitude are but modifications and consequences of the relation of labor to production and capitalism's preoccupation with endless accumulation will result in total ecological destruction and extinction of foster lemon. The continued pursuit of gains can be liable to a world beset with contradictions created the unintended consequences of accumulation or economic stagnation, financial crisis, and planetary ecological destruction. Capitalism, the accumulation of catastrophe for the world's people and method is key. Our alternative is dialogical, but rather dialectical materialism, which provides the best method for understanding social and political relations. This education is key to achieve a class consciousness to stop capitalism. Will 67. Orthodox Marxism refers to the method, the conviction dialectical materialism is the road to truth. If the problem is to be approached the right way, this must be grasped before we venture upon a discussion of method. The need to discover features of the theory, the ways of grabbing the masses, which convert the dialectical method into a vehicle revolution by turn point out that these masses were in a grip of quite different forces than that of it. Will be a form that enables the masses to become conscious of their socially necessary actions only when a consciousness stands in a relation to a reality that can, in theory, be in practice be united. The precondition of the revolutionary function in it. Every stage of the process becomes so fixed that it cannot be generalized and developed, and our method is the only way to stop capitalism. Their knowledge only values epistemologies and identity. Lucas 67 is not the primary primacy of economic motives in the historical explanation of the constituency, a decisive difference between Marxism and bourgeois thought, but the point of to a view of totality, the supremacy of the world is over and departs its essence of the method, the capital separation from the producer, the total process of reduction and atomization of society into individuals must have a profound influence on philosophy of capitalism, proletarian science, and revolutionary above all, because this method, dialogical method aims at understanding society as a whole. Marxism simultaneously raises and reduces all specifications of level of aspects in dialogical process was the decisive was whether this process of isolation is mean towards understanding the or whether this is mean towards a whole, or whether the abstract knowledge of the isolated fragment retains its autonomy and becomes in itself bourgeoisie thought judges social phenomena from the standpoint of the individual. No path leads to the individual totality. There's a vast road leading to aspects of particular areas going from mere fragments in the most part. Next off, the counterpoint. The United States Congress should limit the President's war power authority to assert on behalf of the United States immunity from judicial review by establishing a cause of action allowing civil suits brought by against the United States by those unlawfully injured by targeted killing operations that errors or their states into security clear legal proceedings. That ex post review solves accountability and transparency. Chapter 13. Judicial engagement with targeted killing does not require establishment of a new court. The complainant asks the court to conduct a review, ex post review, to clarify the relevant legal framework of the proceedings and adversarially increasing their procedural legitimacy and improving their substantive accuracy. The court can focus on events that have already transpired. Evidence can provide an accountability that cannot be supplied ex ante to redress for failures of people killed and civil liability for officials who conduct violated the Constitution. Now the case. The Western rationality is the best structuring medicine system, constantly increases the circle of community that is within liberalism died for. With good management, we may be able to rather than accept the truth that a first magnitude catastrophe of global nuclear war management depends on preserving and extending the multilateral system of the rising power laws. Be absorbed to a system that emphasizes cooperation. There is no point in dreaming that we can leap straight from some and never let the universal brother. We will have to confront the problem of war within the context of the existing state system. Here's where we must start from states around the world. We must now abandon war. It can only be done through full cooperation. The world's governments, if there is no impartial center of justice, and in any case, does not mankind that makes decisions, but governments that are own national interests. And if the abolition of great power war is a truly 100-year project, we made substantial progress. We did not have World War III. If the glass should look at least half full, that there's a slow but quite imperceptible revolution. It can be consciousness at all times. We have to run our affairs with the substance. There's a special category whom we ought not to kill. We have successfully aligned this category with the transitions and received as another World War. We cut the whole process short. We don't endorse the gender language in that card and anti-imperial struggles to sort struggles for real global justice, which causes more oppression. One, the policies of anti-imperialism distorts the global struggles for justice, taking the criteria of one policy instead the opposition of Western policy rather than to advance for the justice of the victims of oppression. Distorts our responses to the victim. We need to support the victims because other Western governments can take up the cause now, and the germs of ultimate and reflexivity of Western thought. The improvements in technology make them incredibly precise. Car right 13. Advances in satellite communication sensing technologies that combined with the existing statecraft technologies are allowed to drones to emerge as a platform of choice. The counter-terror objects provide imagery of far greater distances, altitudes, and the United Crews are not distracted by the constant duties of flight. They can rerun the entire mission for effectiveness. They can have armed escort. They can see over hills and around corners. Drones offer advantages over the other forces in counter-terrorism. Basically, they can be located from the area of interest. They have greater mobility since you're more effective in locating a threat. They can persist in an area for extended periods of time while waiting to clear the opportunity. They can adapt to fixing mobile targets, and there is a linear increase in risk every time they offer an action. That's 13. There's just a sustainable method of offensive operations that can effectively hinder the ability of terrorists to organize and execute attacks that cannot be handled like a law enforcement issue without an offensive element. The U.S. strategy this day will be postponed, increasing the chances that the terrorists will get through America's defensive drones remains the only effective offensive tool. And nuclear terrorists embracing nuclear taboo. Event 9. The nuclear taboo is a norm supported by the presumptive approach of the North through social change. The increased threat of nuclear terrorism has lowered people's confidence. The nuclear weapons will not be used. Using institutional measures to break the foundation of nuclear terrorism will lessen the probability of nuclear terrorist attack and strengthen people's confidence in the nuclear taboo. The nuclear taboo can help both countries reflect on suspicions about the nuclear weapons program and avoid miscalculation and reduce the danger of war. Drone proliferation is good. Rosen 13-week intelligence results from reconnaissance and reconnaissance troops. Surveillance capability of drone technology provides an effective remedy by collecting real-time intelligence. We are moving swiftly towards an era where the fog wars become history for the high-tech military armed conflicts move towards total transparency.
Let me ask about this linear dis-add-on case. So your argument is that if we remove or restrict the ability of the president to use drones in one particular way, that this causes a linear risk of nuclear terrorism?
Sure. I mean, it only took 19 people.
Where in this piece of evidence does it say that we need to use drones in an exceptional masculinist cyborgic way in order to prevent the risk of nuclear terrorism?
I mean, it's a defense of the status quo, which you've defined in those terms.
Where does I don't think
obviously this guy's not like writing like
right. Obviously, this person does not define the status quo in the same way we do, so that's a pretty hot.
Well, they're both descriptive
Yes, and all descriptions are not equal. Let's talk about the counterplane. Why is this competitive with the affirmative?
Well, it maintains all the ways we use drones now, just so it has a transparency mechanism so that it is done in a way that might not be less masculinist or less imperialist, but it is certainly more transparent.
If we win that the affirmative doesn't remove drones, then why is the counterplane competitive?
It's competitive because you've made arguments about the sustainability of drones and the negative externalities produced by drones.
So do you have to win that representations are a part of advocacies then in order to go for the counterplane? I don't understand.
No,
we
the
have a
counterplane.
text.
I mean, the counterplane is also sort of, it's basically a uniqueness counterplane for our case turns to say we need to have a sustainable policy of being able to use targeted killing when it's necessary without it being the flying death for us.
Gotcha. So what about transparency and accountability is able to solve back? So you will not make the claim that the counterplane solves case, is what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It solves a lot of the harms associated with.
Why does accountability and transparency resolve the ocular-centric vision of the Enlightenment?
Well, for instance, you give the you give an example of the person who has a terrorist over for lunch and then gets struck. If that had to be held to strict scrutiny and people were actually had informed about those targeting decisions, then
a hypothetical anecdotal argument does not make.
I mean, that's
so. Let's talk about topicality. Where do you read an interpretation that we didn't restrict the War Powers Authority of the President? I understand you made the argument that we talked about surveillance drones, okay, and drones may or may not exist in ways that are not part of targeted killing authority. I don't understand why that means that the advocacy of the affirmative must necessarily do something about surveillance drones or affect drones in a way that's not about targeted killing authority.
If the advocacy doesn't deal with either of those things, then you don't solve the ways.
No. Okay, well, you can make that claim in the block if you want,
I guess
but
I'm making it right now.
Okay, cool. So can we wipe those arguments and just flow this as a no solvency argument then?
And more importantly,
well, then why don't you defend it?
In the sense that it has not restricted an explicit congressional authorization of authority to the president.
No, it just hasn't implemented a piece of legislation to do that, and you didn't read framework, so I don't understand what argument you think you have in the 1C about why we should lose. What argument do you think you have in the 1NC on topicality about why the affirmative should lose for not implementing legislation?
It's not a USFG violation. It's
awesome.
A question of,
Thank you. That's what your partner said. So just making sure.
I just have to send out
You have to restrict congressional authorizations as they exist.
Sorry,
the authority is USFG. The agent of your advocacy doesn't have to be USFG.
Okay, cool. Just to clear it up, though, we don't have to implement any USFG action in order to meet your interpretation.
You have to suggest that United States authorities should
change, but we don't have to implement the
should
agent
be restricted, and that authority comes from explicit delegation.
For instance, if you had a passive voice advocacy that said
so if we said that the end point of the affirmative advocacy was that war power authority was restricted, we don't have to make the mechanism of that change be USFG action.
Your mechanism has to be the advocacy, though. It can't be like some in-point nonsense.
Correct. Okay, but just to clear up that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I have the time? Do y'all care if I speak over your stand? Thanks. It's gonna be case counter plan framework cap. How do I make this?
It's imperfect, but I can make it like this small. Is that cool?
Totally fine.
That's way better than the way I made those stands shorter before. I like that.
With like zigs and
Yeah, I would do the like. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah,
There's gonna be an
We're talking with people who have tried almost every zig answer.
Exactly. Right.
Sorry, can I get the word again?
Yeah, it's gonna be case, counter, plan, T, and cap. I'm just gonna make an overview on it.
There's going to be an overview on the case.
We all good?
I lost my husband and two young sons, namely John Wally and Rahman Wally, during a drone attack 3 months ago. They were innocent daily wagers and were not affiliated with any militant group. I am left with their widows and 8 children. Where should I go? What was my fault? I don't know. Why a drone hit my poor family. I'm old and sick and have no sources to feed these orphans. Omar Jana, a woman from Southern Wars, to stand the role of the balance to affirm the resolution through the opening of the non-isomorphic subjects, agents, and territories of stories unimaginable from the vantage point of the cyclopean, self-satiated eye of the master subject. situated knowledges allows us to create a political responsibility to the topic, tending to the fact that these are not abstract disembodied beings, that they are people. If their one and C is not grounded in a view from somewhere, which means that the case is always going to be a dissent to all their positions, that would become clear. In a second, I'm going to isolate the 3 impacts that I don't think they've answered to the case. The first is epistemology. Current drone warfare policy is only understood that the rhetoric and dominant war story of the state are Shirley, Gramsci, and Octor. Evidence indicates that this creates an embodied epistemology and feminist accountability for objectivity that opens up spaces for knowledge that are written out of the dominant war story. This is a dissent to the capitalism alternative because they don't have a new way for creating an epistemology that is outside of the state, or the dominant state rhetoric, which means that their alternative always gets co-opted. It's a dissent to the framework interpretation because they still only want you to see the debate space in terms of the dominant United States war story. Our affirmative is necessarily against that, trying to create a story for the debate or a way of relating to the debate space that doesn't constantly render partial perspective to the periphery. And there's also a dissent to the counterplan because the counterplan literally frames drone warfare only through the lens of the state. The second impact is annihilation of the other. Wilcox, Gramsci, and Octor evidence indicate the current logic of drones are disembodied, masculinized cyborg soldiers render the target as feminized and other, justifying the state's extermination of these populations because they are literally written out of humanity. That should have been pretty clear and cross-explained, explained that this impact is inevitable to happen when they never even engage with the partial perspectives, means that they are active and complicit in the rendering of these perspectives to the periphery. The third impact is active the rereading of these partial perspectives. We create a more ethical way of engaging in politics relating to the other and the resolution because we can finally be held accountable for existing in new forms of knowledge production. That's our Gramsci Octor evidence. Now the first argument they make is Western rationality is good. We never criticize Western rationality in its totality. Again, we say that it's a specific problem with objectivity of knowledge that we render local and situated marginalized perspective to the periphery. They say the anti-imperialist struggle to source problems of real justice. This is literally a card from our own office, which means I think it flows additionally. We're not an anti-imperialist struggle. We are a struggle to change the way that the debate space operates. This is a debate about debate. Now they say that drones can improve their precise. Drones might be precise objects and they might be better than some alternative options. That doesn't mean that the current status quo relationality to drones in the debate space is a good one. Now before I go on answering the rest of these arguments, there is no link to any of them. We do not eliminate drones. That we were clear before the round and during cross-ex that we restrict the president's ability to use drones in an exceptional way, which means that post the affirmative drones can still happen. We don't prevent action. They say that drones lead to there's nuclear terrorism. This is the kind of terrorist talk and the kind of rendering and framing of the terrorists as feminized bodies that our Haraway evidence criticizes, where they are irrational and they're going to break the nuclear taboo instead of focusing on how the United States constantly violates other people's rights every day. They say that drone proliferation solves miscalc. Drone encourages governments to resort to deadly force. Rosstown 2012. Drones will attack and properly identify targets. Lower cost for encourage governments to resort to deadly force more quickly than trend would accelerate many drone technology rapidly improves and perhaps becomes fully automated through the advances in artificial intelligence. Paradoxically, improved precision could lead to increase in deadly mistakes, and use of drones creates a moral distancing that leads to global-side bombing in 2013. Drones have taken over decision-making and selection targets from both the rank and file of the highest place in order machines. You don't gnash your teeth when you press a button. The key is key of place to key. Let loose the apocalypse, the gesture will initiate the apocalypse, not differently than the gesture. If they something is symbolized, the satanic age of our situation is precisely the innocence of the gesture, the negligibility of the activity of needed step of cataclysm, including globicide. Now, go to the counterplan. This is a debate about debate, which means that they literally do nothing to solve our act. They still maintain drones in exceptional use. They still maintain rendering partial perspective to the periphery. Now, permutation do both. I don't think that this is at all competitive with our affirmative. If anything, our case is just a disadd to it. Additionally, you can't not trust that the government is going to be transparent about anything they do. They have no mechanism for making sure that we can trust the government. Now, framework, topicality. We restrict the president's war powers. We restrict the president's ability to use drones in an exceptional way. They say that it needs to be relegated by Congress, but calls for the United States federal government policy action is colonialist legacy. Dr. Shirley, Berkeley, 2008. The state's policymaker debate comes with a sense of detachment associated with the spectator posture. Participants engage in debates where they distance themselves from events and subject debates. Debaters can throw around terms like terrorism, nuclear war without blinking debate simulation. Journalists are distance debated from the real participation in political context. They debate when we lift the call for United States federal government policymaking. We're not immune from the colonialist legacy that established a in the economy. We cannot wish away the perfect atrocities in our name simply by refusing to acknowledge the implication that benefits to the policymakers and imperialist persona such a stance is linked to the norm of historical and contemporary practices of power that introduce and maintain the very networks of oppression and discursive practices to policy or to debate or develop within and through the system of power and privilege. These practices implicated in the maintenance of hegemony. This is also a disadd to the counterplan. Their interpretation breaks through resolution is a passive object of knowledge. We from the resolution is a material semiotic actor. That's our hairway evidence, and the vision of debate is what it is right now. We have a topic every single round. It's already a team interpreting the resolution in a different way, which means there's no unique link to any of our arguments. Reading text multiple ways is good. Hairway 91 in my course. Students read politically engaged essays in one of my movement studies to undergraduate students to reread and misread and also reflect on the field of possible understanding goals to make these critically reflexive readings open up the complexity of location and affinities and partially allied and partially oppositional drawings of maps and women's consciousness into the local, global, personal, political webs of situated knowledge. We meet, we are from the resolution, just not a part of the imaginable. We meet the resolution says in the topic area affirmatives in the topic area both indefinite detention and targeted killing permutation. We need to have numerous interpretations, translations, stutterings, and partly understood. Only then can we come to completely objectively understand the resolution. That's our 1AC hair evidence that all very impacts are not unique. Lots of other teams read affirmatives like ours. Now they make the violation that our drone technology we're talking about is not targeted killing. That's not true. We discussed in length the effects that drone technology and targeted killing specifically has. This is a reason why they specifically push the perspective to the periphery. We read 3 narratives in the 1AC that were all about the effects of targeted killing. Additionally, the kind of drones that we talk about are not just surveillance drones. We talk about other kinds of drones. Now they say dialogue. We can still have dialogue within our framework. Nothing about us precludes us from having an academic discussion about it and a dialogical conversation about it. They are the only ones that are monological in their discussion. They say that we need to have a stasis point. The Steinberg part says that we literally need to just have a point of stasis, which we provide, which means that there is no impact to framework or topicality. Predictability, just to preempt it, we are predictable. We discuss the experiences of those people that are affected by the war powers authority of the president, which means that it's a predictable part of the resolution. Our app is on the casebook. You had plenty of time to prepare. Now go to the CAPK. They all can't solve the case because it cannot account for or see outside of the eye of the cyclops. They leave intact in the debate space. The God truth, the disembodied universalistic gaze from above that is everywhere and nowhere at once. When they are confronted with partial perspectives of those marked object by the God truth, by capitalism, they retreat into high theory Eiffel Tower elitism and can't even recognize that the narratives were read. The app is a prerequisite to all solvency rose in 2011. Here we are, just for unrated, regulated, visual gluttony is available for only few possible people and institutions. Those are part of the history and science, militarism, capitalism, colonialism, and also what this visuality does produce specific divisions of social difference of hierarchies, class, race, gender, sexuality, and so on. Whether the self-claiming to be part of the hierarchy and thus to be universal is nothing ordering difference, dependent distinction between those two claims. The universal relevance to those who are seen as categorized in particular ways. Heroic claims is intimately related to the oppression and tyrannies of capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, and so on, which means there is no link or affirmative start from criticizing the notion of capitalism. However, there is a disadd to their alternative because they can only see the way that capitalism causes oppression, but they can never see the different ways that capitalism causes different oppressions or see the different oppressions that come as a result. I don't think that they have also their impact is empirically denied. Capitalism has been around for a really long time and none of us are dead. The 1AC Gramscian actor evidence indicates that drones have become a type of eye that have been perfected through capitalism, militarism, and colonialism. They represent a God trick, the ability to gaze from nowhere in a disembodied view or a hairway. 2007 evidence indicates that by reading in partial perspective, we are able to reorient ourselves through the topic and in capitalism through new situated knowledge not imaginable by the eye of the cyclops. We are the only ones that perform historical materialism around talking about the history of Fatan, the history of these people. They just say, which means that we are the permutation, even if there is some mutual exclusivity in the two. The mutual exclusivity and illusion of the disembodied God trick. Feminist accountability to knowledge requires tune to resonance, not dichotomy. That is our 1AC hairway evidence. Now, our narratives are material, embodied in local knowledge. The state can still drone strike people and still render partial perspective to the periphery after the alternative. Universal struggles against capitalism increase drone usage because they become the terrorists. The traitor threat has replaced the communist threat, and the dialectical procedures of binary mode of thinking is a mutually exclusive that will eventually universalize and all become the same. Rather, we need a form of alliance based on situated knowledges and a form of connections instead of saying that we are all the proletariat. How can we bring indigenous knowledges in with anti-capitalist groups to make a universal struggle only through these situated knowledges? It creates the same universal appeal without relying on universalism. We can accomplish their politics via our app, but they cannot accomplish our app via their methodology. Open for cross-ups.
Okay. The 1AC. Well, here we go. The 1AC advocacy says that certain uses of surveillance drones and the use
No,
of
our advocacy statement doesn't say anything about drones. It's right here. I have it in front of me. The advocacy text doesn't use the word drone.
Okay. Well, I guess the 1AC makes the claim that surveillance is bad and that
1AC makes a lot of claims, but we
May I ask my
don't
question?
advocate anything
Sure,
about
but
surveillance drones.
You can ask your question, but if you say something that's wrong about our affirmative, I'm not going to let you get away with mischaracterizing the premises.
Really?
So 1NC said Nazism was good, and now I have a question. You're probably going to say, no, we didn't say Nazism
at
was
least
good.
wait until the 2NC cross-X. When can we use drones after the F?
We don't prescribe when exactly we can use drones, like only at 11:11. Rather, we take a stance that
could we have killed Anwar al-Awlaki?
I don't know.
again, I can't take a stance on that. Our evidence rather just
Then
indicates.
how would we
I'm about to
determine?
answer your question.
Proceed.
Rather, our Gramscian-Achter evidence, that in our Wilcox evidence indicates that when we rhetorically analyze and when we step away from, when we include the broader partial perspectives, that we're able to create a more ethical way of using drones that is not in an exceptional way. So can I say for sure we can always kill Anwar al-Awlaki? I don't know,
Well,
but I can say that it's
I
bad.
guess how does that inform actual targeting decisions?
I don't know
Like,
what
what
that
is
means.
it?
I don't know what your
Our
question is.
argument,
Like, is your argument that people in decision-making capacities, like the DoD or the CIA, should be informed by the partial perspectives of
I mean,
No.
probably, but our argument more specifically is about debate, and that
Yeah.
we as academics should, if we're going to talk about these policy decisions, then we should at least be informed on the actual bodies that are represented in the resolution inherently, and that by and I guess additionally, by making it come from a state-centric narrative perspective, then you continue to justify the hegemony of the state narrative
All right,
over the
I guess
perspective
I
of
want
those right to the
like a
periphery.
clarification question. I
Sure.
thought the crossings to the 1C was pretty clear that you don't have to like embody the state. What's the link to your Shanara Reed Brinkley evidence?
it's an even if.
Call
It's like
for
there's
Congress, and it's a dissent to your counterpoint.
no right. It's like if
Oh, so
you
it's just
if you
that makes
there
sense.
is no link to this argument. The only link could be if you say we have to implement USOG policy.
Sure.
If you say that, then we preempted everything.
You say that multiple ways of reading a text is good. Do you have a counterinterpretation of any of the words in the resolution?
Yeah, all of our meets are counter-interpretations in the
In
resolution.
what sense? What like I guess so I
Well,
can be sure to
your,
answer.
well, I
everything.
guess
What
your
are the-
interpretation was just that we need to restrict war powers. We claim that we restrict the president's ability to use drones in an exceptional
so
way. That is
cuts
also
to
a
the center.
counter-interpretation.
What is the congressional delegation of authority to the president to use drones in an
That is
exceptional way?
an interpretation of an ability to restrict
And I'm
presidential
asking
war
what
powers
yours
authority.
is, I guess. Like
Ours
what
is that our Speech Act tries to
did that?
tries to restrict the president's ability to use drones in an exceptional way in this debate space.
Our second to last piece of evidence in the 1AC defines what exceptional means in that context, if that was your confusion.
Here. Which part did you say defines exceptional in that context?
It's the second to last piece of evidence
It's like
in the
the-
1AC.
Like,
So the one that's talking
the
about
Gramscian actor.
the one that's talking about people on the ground with vehicle Neil Fatah.
Sure.
Just unclear what part of the 2AC case overview is that, PCC?
The role of the ballot. I mean, I guess that might not be verbatim for what the one CFCC.
I'm pretty sure it is,
Pretty accurate.
Was that your
Like,
question?
I might have changed some tenses from the past or something.
T-shirts.
Okay. I think E through D. Saving that and
So
that should be going your way.
I just said it.
It's the counterpoint in the case. 2.
Yep.
Alright, sweet. The counterplan solves the entirety of the affirmative, but it avoids the least of all of the case turn arguments. The counterplan would be able to incorporate the testimony and the narratives of the people in which they exist through the mechanism of testimony, because the counterplan sets up a cause of action for unlawful drone usage, which means that people have to testify in the courts about the usage of that drone incorporation. The question is whether or not that testimony should be heard after the drone usage that would be able to deter future abuses of drones, or should that be heard before we use a drone inevitably that would restrict the ability of the president to carry out those drone strikes. That is the critical distinction between the counterplan and the plan, but it would be able to resolve all of the incorporation of perspectives that their affirmative is talking about. That is also an answer to the permutation to both, because the permutation to both would have a check both ex ante and ex post. In this situation, the permutation to do that would not actually the permutation would to if the affirmative is functionally the counterplan, then it does not actually restrict targeted killing authority. McKelvey and 11 targeted killing suggest premeditated military force. The president has exclusive authority over determining whether a situation or individual presents an imminent threat. These general concepts of law are subject to judicial review. Externally, the ex post review is what is necessary to create a deterrent effect, because every time that we use a drone, the president knows that it will be reviewed and that there is a cause of action to be able to resolve that. That also answers their government would not be transparent argument, because they would have to accept the cases into the court, which increases transparency, which is a mechanism to resolve these things. Pragmatic, policy-focused approach is critical to productive change. The affirmative's abstractions will be able to produce it. Novak, in American social science, generated some fresh ways looking at power, knowledge, guides, economic, political, and legal. The pragmatic appraisal is worth recovering. All understood the problem of power in America's multifaceted, rather than spend endless time debating the proper definition of law. They concentrated instead on detailed investigations of power and action and policy, rather than confining the examination of power to abstract theory. These realists have forgot the radical law, the concrete consequences of legal power. The consequences of American state power are all around us. This is the only way to be able to restrain the United States in the status quo. Now, the case arguments, the role of the ballot should be to incorporate new areas of Cyclops. The counterplan can do that, but it preserves the ability of the all-seeing gaze to exist ex ante before the drone strike, which we suggest is necessary to resolving things. We have a couple of impact turns to the affirmative on that sense. The first is the lifting of the fog of war. The cyclopic view that is a view from nowhere ensures that we can view everything, which lifts the fog of war, which has empirically been the reason why violence has actually happened. The reason why World War I rather broke out was because the fog of war, the question of whether or not the alliance commitments would actually fill in those questions. The drones ensure that there is no information breakdown in those situations, because surveillance is perfect in those situations. It's also necessary to ensure that we can root out and kill those who would reject the system that as it exists right now. The policing power of drones is necessary, but it also institutes a mechanism by perfect surveillance to create the reflexivity that is the positive versions of the Enlightenment. The all-seeing eye, though, is necessary for that reflexivity, because we have to know all of the situations in which we are able to resolve these things. Their epistemology disadvantage is wrong. Why is the dominant epistemology always incorrect? They have no explanation of why the dominant epistemology in this instance causes violent. Calculation is good and doesn't devalue life or vest. In a government decision, different from personal decision, they affect people in the every government decision can seem to ignore what makes individuals important, but it also provokes the kind of compassion that is needed. Cost-benefit calculus seem harsh because no approach is necessary. Simply the most lives require a step back, and sometimes we need to treat a person like a number of failings to use these tools amount to abandoning our duties to one another. We exercise compassion by recognizing numbers represent living, breathing human beings. Calamities can result from the failure to use reason. The current logic of drones are not the extreme examples. The explanation of it creating an otherness that is outside of ourselves is not a sufficient explanation for conflict. Both into the otherness is important. We should not overestimate religious and cultural deficit, economic advantage, political power, land, war. Was about all of these things. Modern council explanation are rarely where various constantly intertwined and contributed to others. This answers most of their arguments, especially the ethics argument. Drones need to a new relationship with other people because of the constant intelligence. We can create the proximity that we're talking about. I'll read more pieces of evidence on that later. Now, I'm not going to go for any of these Western epistemology arguments because they have sufficiently proven that those do not link. But now the drones are precisely, The counterplan solves the status quo problems of drones. I've already explained most of those arguments because it is a functional uniqueness counterplan for these arguments. The next argument is that they do not link to an elimination of drones. Yes, you are. To be able to solve any of your affirmative, the incorporation of local perspectives have the 1AC have all rejected the use of drones. In fact, the incorporation of those local perspectives is often what fails to account for the broader goals of the drone policy, because people can only see what drones do to them, which is blow up their family members. That local perspectivism would ensure that drones would not be possible, especially in a situation in which the federal government is now forced to get local perspectives on the implications of a drone attack that they have not used yet. The ex-ante review of drones as a result of narratives based on perspectives destroys executive flexibility in fighting terrorism. Flat in 13. An ex-ante review would directly interfere with the executive's ability to carry out military operation and ties together the related point of just how difficult it would be to have meaningful ex-ante review in the context in which time is so often of the essence. Many of the opportunities these kind of operations are fleeting and often opening close within a short window. Requirement of judicial review might prevent the government from carrying out authority. Even if judicial review were more impossible, it was hard to imagine they would produce wise or reliable decisions. This turns the entirety of the affirmative. Drones are really key to allowing people to express their perspectives in the status quo. The status quo allows the balance of terror in federally administered areas to shape the narratives of the 1AC. Johnson and Sarvahi in 13. Drone strikes can reduce terrorism. One way in which it might do so is by altering the terrorist logic of violence in a civil war. The logic puts information in the center of explanation of patterns of violence and asymmetric wars. The incumbent and insurgency seek to defeat the other by maintaining control over key areas of information, particularly critical because asymmetric wars, the terrorist movements that oppose incumbents avoid direct battle because their relative material weakness states over the distinguished members of the terrorist organization, ordinary civilians, increasing the importance and value of information. Terrorists regress the measures to keep their tactics and procedures secret, and the implication of the theories that when an insurgent or terrorist group fully controls the locale, insurgents should perpetuate little violence because they know that civilians have no incentive to disavow incumbent violence is likely to be indiscriminate due to the dearth of local intelligence, technological innovation, and increasingly changing the ways in which incumbents can counter militants. Drones are the best example. Drones can later making them ideal terms for monitoring suspicious activities and tracking unsuspected drones. Use militant violence by altering the logic of violence. Elaborated physical control is no longer efficient to ensure information dominance. Drones enjoyable incumbents to collect information in hostile areas. Drone strikes but militants' ability to exercise sovereign control of the local areas. The greater the threat from above, the more costly it is for militants to exercise effective control of these same complex violence. Predicted innovation could lead us to anticipate an increase in terrorist violence. Our argument applies the opposite set of observables. The reason that drone strikes in an area are a meaningful indication of the increased security risk of militants. The increased risk associated continuing to operate there on any type of militant activities that are vulnerable to drone capabilities. They have also largely conceded the roads and area that would lead to a terrorist breakdown of the taboo. We need to be able to attack terrorists that reject the international norm against using nuclear weapons, because the collapse of that norm would result in escalatory violence against things. That is a situation in which we need to be able to define otherness in a way that preserves humanity in its existence, which has been evidence that fundamentally outweighs any of their arguments, because it is a fundamental prerequisite to ontological questioning that the unrestricted drone usage is the condition for creating proximity. It ensures that norms spill over to all other types of weapons. Grows in 13. Drones are also an obligation to trigger. A critical concept of drone technology is not remoteness, but proximity. Is not at all different. The obligation to use binoculars to check a target by far remote is what matters. Their surveillance and the ability to hit a target within seconds. Drone technology represents the avant-garde of intelligence collection of the world into one that altering not only the threshold of precautionary measures, but also their rationality. The ability of drones to see everything is something that is a mediating ability, which is our Cartwright evidence. It also allows for more effective review of drone technology, which means that the reflexivity of the status quo is sufficient. There is no need for the imposition of an external review, especially in ex-ante review as it exists. There are also drones do not lower the threshold for conflict. They do not lead to moral distancing. Carpenter and Ciccone in 11. I've been saying that remote killing makes war too much like a video game. Other revolution in military technology often progressively removes the weapons barrier. It's not so clear whether the so-called Nintendo effect makes killing easier. Drone pilots say they suffer mental stress precisely because they have detailed real-time images of their targets. At no time in history, the combination of technology and military training strategies made killing so easy. Yet war has been declining for 70 years. That is the increase in the ability of the cycloptic eye to see things over the earth, is the ability to resolve these things. The terror talk and the feminized other is something that is insufficient to be an explanation for violence. It is not an explanation. It is necessary, but not sufficient to cause the escalatory cycles of violence that they are talking about. Even if it does cause some mild forms of violence, it is outweighed by the collapse of the nuclear taboo.
So, I'm sorry, I totally missed the top of the case. What was your role of the ballot argument?
The role of the ballot argument is that, I think that, I forgot to write this down. The role of the ballot, news story, I think that my role of the ballot argument was just that the counterplan was able to sort of access some of the role of the ballot.
Accesses the role of the ballot?
It would be able in some way to create new stories within the cycloptic vision. It would certainly open up new stories through process of testimony.
I guess I don't understand. I thought this was going to be a simple question, but now I'm slightly confused. Like, is your argument a new separate role of the ballot? or is
The
your
role of the
argument that
ballot
you solve
at the
our
end.
role
I mean,
of
the role of the ballot at the end of the day is who did the better debating, and that's defined by sort of like
I think
impact
we're gonna have a
calculus
debate. I think
questions.
we're going to have a debate about that, but can you just answer my
I
question?
think that the role of the ballot is to preserve life or to
So the
maximal
role of the
utility.
ballot is to preserve life. Can you write that down for me, Michael? Thanks. And that's what we can hold you to, right?
I mean, that is like for the purposes of our case argument. That is the role
So I
of
just
the
want to know
ballot.
for the purposes of the debate, what is your role of the ballot?
I mean, a role. I think that the
What
only
is, dude,
role
this has like been
of a
minute
ballot.
now. Can
Is
you
your role of the ballot conditional? Is that your response, or?
I think that each argument that we have made supposes a different role for what the ballot is.
Interesting. So what's your role of the ballot on the counterplan?
On the the counterplan and case arguments are functionally like
So the
a
counterplan and the
calculative-
case have one role of the ballot. Are we gonna get the role of the ballot?
role of. I mean, I think that this sort of like speaks to my frustration generally
yeah, I
with
think
role of the
you-
ballot arguments in
you
debate.
say-
The role of the ballot is always already only to determine who
Then
wins or
why did
loses
you?
the
Then
debate.
why
I don't
did you
think
make?
that's inevitable.
And then why did you make another role of the ballot argument if that's true?
I guess more importantly, I think we are impact turning the role of the
I guess it
ballot.
depends on
So
what's
your
defined
impact-
by better debating. Like the role of the ballot determines what the judge means when they say that one team.
I mean,
is
yes,
better
the debating
Like,
in the
if
debate.
the role of the ballot
Debating
is,
in the debate
if the role of
determines
the
what
ballot,
the better debating
If
is.
the role of the ballot was to make
What
the
is
most
the impact
muffins,
frame?
then the judge would vote for the team who made the most muffins as the team who did the better debating. Right? The role
I
of
mean,
the
if
ballot
they could
determines
win-
what she thinks the better debating means.
Yeah, if it's sort of at the end of the day a framework argument, what impacts ought we to consider through a role of the ballot?
we
If
should
we're winning
only-
arguments about why the impacts of the 1AC advocacy outweigh the benefits of the 1AC advocacy, then I think that the negative
I'm
should
thinking
win.
that's making a whole lot of sense, and I think that maybe you don't have a role of the ballot anymore. But I'm going to ask another question. You say that we necessarily have to eliminate all drones.
I don't think that you necessarily
Well,
have to
you said
eliminate.
that in your 2NC. I wrote it down. I started. I put quotes around it. Like
Sure.
why
The
did
reason is because partial perspectives would mean that no one inevitably would ever want them, which I'm not sure how you know, A, but you definitely made that argument.
So
B.
why did you say that? Is
I
it
mean,
not
there
true?
are-
Like, can we just agree that we don't eliminate all of drones?
I mean, sure, we can agree
Cool,
that
so
you do
how
not
do you get a
eliminate
link to
all
any
of
of these
drones.
arguments?
We read a piece of evidence about ex ante review that suggests that a review based
I got you on ex ante. Can I scratch off the F does eliminate all drones argument for my flag?
I mean, you can scratch off the eliminates all drones, but I think that the local perspectives would restrict drones argument
Is
still
there.
makes sense as a link argument.
Makes sense to me.
I think that is the. I misspoke in
The
the
meat
all
of the-
drones. Yeah, I mean, it's like
Okay.
sort of the incentive to exaggerate a statement
Watch out.
at its beginning and then clarify as it continues.
All right. Is the it's cap and then T with the overview.
You can read the piece of paper that's on the table.
Can you run the what is happening?
On the no this.
Yeah. It's chair by. What?
DELL IOTT at KCACC.
You said cap and then T.
Yep.
All right, everybody good?
Did you say you're not?
I'm good, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine, thank you.
Capitalism not going forward, the permutations only test competition will also concede that there's no impact to capitalism because there's no offense to it, there's no unique asserting their offense, even if the drone technology is a function of capitalism does not have a reverse causal claim in the 2AC. This only means that they eliminate a presidential authority to use drones. The technology will be used by McDonald's and Walmart to find customers in the state of exception. Now, the topicality argument, our interpretation is the act has to advocate a restriction of presidential war power authority. Limited topic based on resolutional syntax is a key to community versus engagement. We have to be talking about the same thing in order to engage. Whether we have a response to that begs the question of whether we are adequately prepared, which is the circularity of truth argument. If Hitler were to give a speech and then dictate his opponent's mouth shut, you should not fault the opponent for not engaging with Hitler's argument. Second is accessibility. If we have, as a community, committed to one topic per year methodology, then we should follow through. That makes it harder for novices, exacerbates our resource disparities because big programs can have a new app every other round. No topic generics are sufficient to restore balance. Small schools have to debate multiple topics, cause a retreat from resolutional debate because everybody has to find an unbeatable niche app and a generic neg to us and other people doing the same thing. This also proves our interpretations of floor, not a ceiling. A multitude of situated knowledges and literature bases are good, but if they're not tied to the common question and the common referent of the resolution, then debate is simply not possible. This also proves that fundamentally having a topic is better than whether that topic is good or bad because it's a prerequisite for the communication that's the basis of the activity, and this requirement will enhance their advocacy in Trader 10. Creativity is about problem solving. By definition of problems, they limit when a creative problem solving uniquely challenges that challenge that you're required to establish a method limits by the truly creative. You have to clean up your mess, organizing those fragments into something useful. That is the hard part. Now, their first arguments that we meet, this is colluded and not true. The violation is pretty clear in the cross-examination. They say that they remove the authorization to use drones in state of exception. That's not something that's been delegated by the Congress. The AUMF and CAS are the only delegations. Well, lawfare. No day. The U.S. government's targeted killing program is affirmatively authorized by Congress with the AUMF. The president could, in theory, act against terrorists presenting an imminent threat to the covert action statute. Also, their role of the ballot also doesn't say that, which is their only advocacy. It only says what you should use the resolution. Doesn't define the resolution, which means that you should err towards using the context of the ONC to define it. They say also the role of the ballot proves that our interpretation solves all their options because they can have that role of the ballot with the topical advocacy. Now, the doctrinary briefly evidence is not responsive. We don't say that you have to say USFG should, just that you have to talk about the restriction in much a particular form of restriction of the War Powers Authority, which is something they do not have it. They do not have it. They do not have a defense of, which means that if we link to this, so is their interpretation. Also, we have the best historical interpretation. Our based on the Youngstown precedent, which links out the apps in the zones violated with Jesse 13. And the majority opinion Youngstown Justice Black underscored the President's authority must assume from either an act of Congress or the Constitution. The zones violated application to circumstances in which there may be no congressional delegated legislation de facto or legal situations involving ambiguous authority. And Youngstown is the best standard 2010. Everybody loves Youngstown. The President's governed by the law. The courts despite appeals to wartime exigency. Youngstown is one of the most celebrated cases dealing with the separation of powers. Youngstown's framework was the assertion of a claim that is widely accepted. His opinion is one of the courts, all time is great. They say multiple textual analysis is good. That is fine. You just say that they had the textual analysis is good without analyzing any of the content of the resolution. This is a reason why they should have to counter-interpret words explicitly. This is also where I will make my must and final words argument. I know how important the community is to you, and it just wouldn't be the same if Chief stopped voting on the must and final words. If you see this argument as a prerequisite to us knowing what they're talking about, which is a prerequisite to meeting, which is an interlinked to all their advocacy arguments. It is a flag. It is a voting issue. They say that there's no uniqueness for the topic. This proves that we do not prescribe that everyone has to read Georgetown's targeted killing act. That there's a multitude of ways to approach a topic for which, yes, you're right, we don't have predictability, uniqueness, but if it was all grounded in the resolution, then that creates a starting point. The fact that other people read non-topical apps is a reason to vote on topicality to dissuade bad practices. So the small schools are able to stay in the game. They say the topic area argument. I can't wait. I have not been able to wait to read this interpretation. The neg area's interpretation is only the targeted killing is only the limited top part of every dictionary. No data to see part of section set aside for a specific function. Also, there's no this interpretation of areas is completely shenanigans. So it makes the topic functionally meaningless because of one word in it. They say the caseless. That does not help us if we do not have the time or resources to be able to prepare before the debate, before the fact that you post it somewhere on the internet. It's not an engagement because that is not the because it's not posted or like the topic is posted for all to see. The caseless is insular, something we'd have to seek out. They say yes, targeted killings and not drones or surveillance. We say don't solve their affirmative because it's all about the gaze, which is not only about armed drones, which means that the president would be able to use surveillance drones to describe these people in the same ways. Also, the 1AC clearly is advocating against use of surveillance drones as well as the technology itself, which is not responsive. This also proves the limits argument because if you can just say that you can't use drones in XK word way, that functionally is unlimited because none of those things are actually part of the law. All of those things are only an effect or a rereading of the law. So if they're able to say they're restricting the AUMF's ability to, or the AUMF's authorization for targeted killing results in a decrease in the use of drones in a way that is particularly bad, and that is fine. But they do not get to fiat that because they do not get to fiat that in the 1AC because otherwise there's no loss of ground. We can't say that the authority is good because they would say that it's not a question of the authority, it's a question of the way that the authority is used in a particular way. We're not able to say targeted killing is good because they say they do not eliminate all, but they say that they're a dialogue. It's just the fact that you have said a word to us, said a speech to us, does not mean that we're able to have a sort of high-level debate that's necessary for the community to sustain itself and also necessary for the sort of decision-making skills. Sorry, my hand job, but worse evidence says is necessary. Yes, we were able to say something, but it's not the high level sort of discussion that's most educational. They say that they provide stasis. This is the same argument. Yes, if anything invites a response, but that not all responses are equal. If we do not have a defined point of stasis before the turn, we're not able to direct our research. They say predictability. They say the predictability. But our interpretation solves predictability arguments with by setting a floor for what is necessary minimum basis for affirmation. If predictability doesn't exist, that's what we solve. But we don't try to impose any particular affirmatives on them or methodologies, which means that we don't waste their predictability data arguments.
Okay.
So you write these things
Have a
down more
guesstimation.
often. You're getting very good at the, like, here, write that down.
Oh, you know me, super anal retentive and always on top of things like that. Yo. It's gonna be T, the counter plan, and then case, but I'm gonna start with the 2AC overview and then do the block order of case.
Can't tell if I smell or if the room smells. It's bothering me.
Like what?
It's probably in some way all of our fault.
Right.
It may be a combination
We all
of
smell.
lack of ventilation.
Okay.
Anyone not ready? This might be such a problem. No problem. Okay. Everyone ready? At the top, extend across the we do affirm a restriction on the war powers authority of the president in order to do targeted killing. We just do it in a particular manner. They don't have an argument that restricting in a particular manner is a problem other than one arbitrary argument about the fact that if it's a critical rather than a policy argument, that would somehow be infinitely unpredictable. I'll answer that on the bottom, but just to shore it up, that is actually the only argument that they have made in terms of their interpretation that we do not meet. They have been able to spin some of their standards evidence to make it sound like it is a dissent to the affirmative, not solved by their interpretation. If they're being honest about what their interpretation actually is, that's the cross-ex argument, or we meets our functional counter-interpretations. You can cross-apply that. If cross-ex don't have an answer coming out of the block to that question, means it checks back against their no counter-definitions arguments. Also, they don't define all the words in the resolution either. There's no non-arbitrary bright line between these two different things, and multiple interpretations of text are critical. That's our Haraway evidence. His response is that we must actually go through and define all of these different meanings. Wrong, though. That's the opposite of what our Haraway evidence says. It says that we cannot go through and define what singular understandings or readings of those texts would be, that we always have to leave it open to contradiction, stuttering, and possibility, that space is what allows the multiple meanings to be possible, that we would destroy it if we defined it.
Sorry, permutation I didn't have an answer to, just that there's no such thing as mutual exclusivity.
And the Haraway evidence says there's no such thing as mutual exclusivity. That's an illusion of the God trick. It means you can permute our definitions. There's no dissonance that articulated in the one and R in terms of reasons why you could not read our interpretations together. Even if there's some mutual exclusivity, that ends up only being a positive thing that allows us to work outside of drone logic, which their attempt to surveil and then remove off different kinds of advocacies is only an extension. If you cross-apply the impact of that for the case debate, they say Congress doesn't delegate exceptional solutions. They do. They just don't call it that, which is why their distinction about critical versus policy restrictions is arbitrary. As long as we can prove that in the status quo, Congress does use things in the way that we have restricted, that means that we have offense and they're mixing burdens, because their response to us restricting Congress in a way that they don't actually do or is not a legal restriction should be a solvency argument, not a procedural one, because it means we wouldn't have an impact, not that we should be arbitrarily excluded from the debate or that it somehow de-justifies the resolution. They're conceding there's still no voter to topicality. Their only argument was de-justification of the resolution, never answered any of our responses. The Dr. Schnarr Reed Brinkley evidence is not handled well enough. First off, it takes out the counterplan stuff. We can see if the United States federal government policies and masking and distancing for the ethical atrocities of the United States federal government's colonialist history. They have no response in terms of falsifying the thesis of this evidence. Only answers about why it doesn't link to their interpretation means you give it 100% weight and reject the counterplans in-round voter because they sanitized and whitewashed the ongoing genocide, racist violence of the United States federal government, and they have no violation if they can't tie us down to a USFG should claim, because their only response would be to functionally create their interpretation in a way that would back end into a USFG perspective anyway, which would be that we can have resistance, but it must be one that's end goals and implementation through the USFG. That's the only actually link to the affirmative, because we defended since before the round, in the round, and all the way through that we will defend a restriction on the war powers authority of the president's ability to target and kill. Now, their community argument, we don't duct tape anyone's mouth shut. Their dialogue argument flows affirmative because they are the monological perspective that doesn't allow multiple interpretations of what debate means or what the community itself means. This might be getting a little too meta for everyone, but it's a debate about debate, which means that is what is important, is what we mean by that community, whose community, and what type of dialogue. Only our argument allows it to be not shut down from the beginning. They say retreat from the resolution destroys debate. We defend the resolution. Now, you should extend across the affirmative's key to understand the resolution as an active meaning generative node, and extend that they lead to the elimination of alpha-type perspectives in debate. They say that they're necessary to solve creativity, but their stasis evidence only says that the clear point of difference is necessary. It doesn't go so far as to say that this point of difference has to be a controversial point of policy action, which is what their spinning of this evidence says, and also is what my argument above about it relinking them back into the interpretation of a policy implementation. They say we destroy meaning. We critique the notion of univocal concept of meaning only links their interpretation back to our affirmative. They say critiquing the word restriction leads to to an infinite apps, I answered this above, but also being part of a legal status quo is key to insolvency advocacy. It checks back because as long as we can describe the way in which it functions in a legalistic norm, means we can answer it, and the predictability bad arguments answer this back. The one in our concedes them just says that they don't try to make us be predictable, but it seems like you do if your argument is that infinite apps are bad. Counterclaim. At the top, you can extend across the permutation, do both. It solves back against any a chance of the case terms because it is able to solve if ex post facto review is so awesome. In addition to that, their partial perspectives incorporates testimony. No, they'll just be assimilated inside of the univocal perspective of the United States federal government from the beginning. People can't represent themselves, come here from FATA, and they don't have lawyers on retainer to come testify, and that also destroys their responsibility for, which is the internal link to the case arguments. Yeah.
It doesn't solve the case. If they're only read ex post facto, it does nothing to change the debate space.
Yeah, and they don't solve for our debate arguments either. In addition to not solving for ethics or epistemology through the responsibility into personal perspectives internally, they also do nothing to change your relationship to the debate space, which is necessary, and that comes first in terms of the role of the ballot. Transparency is a lie and causes masking. The government will just say it didn't happen or it wasn't us. Their policy change is key evidence. Doesn't matter because it's not a dissent to the affirmative. We lead to a change in policy, just don't advocate its implementation through the SFG case. You should extend across the extermination the other impact. They conceded that the negatives logic is complicit with this drone logic because they read different kinds of conditional contradictory positions and attempt to target off our position from multiple angles to destroy us, as well as the fact that the epistemology argument is a complete dissent and turn to the framework argument because it changes the way, or attempts to only define things in terms of the way that they are legalistically defined by the Congress. Case. They say view from nowhere leads to a view from everything. Grimshaw, Actor, and Wilcox evidence says the view from everywhere is an illusion and a flawed epistemology. Their assumption is just that they can view everything. Drones don't cause reflexivity. It's the Bauman evidence much better. This issue causes moral distancing and globicide outweighs any of their arguments. Arguments don't answer us because we don't say that we should actually not be able to use drones anymore. They say all signing I is good. This is all 2NC spin. There's no evidence that says this calculation is good. Sure, but cost-benefit analysis is not the same as the specific types of calculation we're indicting. You should extend across the terror talk argument. Their arguments about terrorism are racist and violence. It also creates a sort of masculinized protector force of drones against the feminized victims who should be critiqued outside, coming out of the 1AC, and yeah, that's good.
Okay, we
California going for it, we will concede that they restrict in a manner that the United States federal government that is sufficient reference to the colonialist United States federal government to link to their read briefly arguments now. The counterpoint I'm also not going for, but the permutation to do both should also be a sufficient link to the coloniality of those arguments. They have also not articulated an impact argument that is external sufficient to outweigh the existential nature of the breakdown of the nuclear taboo as well as the lifting of the fog of war, which means that our counter case arguments would be sufficient. The fact that the counterpoint does not solve is irrelevant because the role of the ballot has always been to determine the desirability of the affirmative. That's where I am now on the case. The role of the ballot should be to determine the desirability of the affirmative. The better way, which should be the better, is the better way to phrase the long-winded 2&C cross-sex example that I have explained. The negative alternative has always been to say that the affirmative is bad based on different things, based on the view from the negative. It's not a view from nowhere, it is a view from the negative, but the ability to kick out of positions is necessary for the sort of reflexivity that is necessary to create community because it allows us to test multiple ideas, to introduce new things, to be able to interrogate and discuss with each other. The idea that I'm kicking out of a position suggests community with you because I am agreeing with a position that allows us to consolidate our positions, but I still do have a fundamental disagreement at the end of the day with the affirmative based on the question of the impact turning of the cyclopic eye. The epistemology turned to framework argument is not applied to the case, which should not be able to be applied. The epistemology argument should not be allowed to be applied to the case arguments in the 2AR because they are not applied. You should have a very specific threshold for what the application of arguments or what the implication of arguments is in the 2R because I cannot predict all of the ways in which they would apply all of the evidence that they have read in various ways to the 2R arguments. Now, the most important thing in the case is the overview argument. They have conceded an entire disadvantage that is the nature of the cyclopic eye is good because drones lift the fog of war, which leads to a decrease in violence. This is a historically better explanation for why conflict happens. Hatred for the other is something that happens after the conflict is initiated and is proposed as a justification to continue and escalate those conflicts, but the fog is also what leads to an otherization, which leads to the escalation of conflicts inevitably, which is the root cause of the 1AC impact's total vision that is created as a result of drones, which is something that they have conceded is possible, or at least something that is in some ways probable as a result of these things, as a result of our Rosen evidence, is something that can eliminate the possibility of conflict because we can constantly know other people's intentions, or at least sufficiently know the other's intentions to determine whether or not there is an escalatory conflict that would be able to be had. That is something that is external to the case that they have no explanation of. I think that you should give the explanation of the 2R more weight on these questions, even if they have a stack of evidence that outweighs the stack of evidence of the 2R because of the depth of explanation. You should not be able to get to the case with a minute and be able to answer a 6-minute 2R about what the case is, especially when I spend a large portion of the 2C on the case arguments, especially the nature. They've also conceded a turns the case argument that the logic of violence in insurgencies means that there is a logic without drones means that there would be a shutdown of perspectives because the logic of violence in a terrorist network is to be violent against people who disagree with you, which means that it would eliminate those perspectives from the discussion. That elimination is only solved by a drone that is able to increase information, that is able to eliminate the fog of war because it eliminates the logic of that violence to be able to control information. There is no possibility of control of information when there is the cyclopic eye, which means that it eliminates that violent justification. Their distancing arg is incorrect. We have read multiple pieces of evidence on this. We all seeing eye means that we see the people who we are killing. Our Carpenter and Shakuri evidence indicates that violence has been decreasing over the last 70 years as a result of people getting farther and farther away because the amount that they see of that conflict is greater and greater as a result of increase in media technology. It also leads to total proximity to conflict, which are Rosen evidence because the line of sight is always there. We always have to use our binoculars before we launch our mortar ground. Our Cartwright evidence indicates that the long loiter times of drones mean that we can always see what is going on in these situations. That panopticon view allows us to have a better review of drone policy, which means that even if drone policy is not great in the status quo is a counterplan that will lead to reflexivity that will resolve the entirety of the affirmative impact. They say that there is no link to drones. This is a laughable argument without a explanation of this. Link to drones is clear. They are an ex-ante review that is based on narratives rather than the judiciary. We always have to review every drone strike based on the perspectives of people that exist in this area, that people exist in individual perspectives before we can even initiate a drone strike, which is a dropped argument. Even if the 2AR has spin, not what that is not their plan is. They have conceded our Vladik evidence that says that ex-ante review would destroy the windows of opportunity that are necessary to kill terrorists that are attempting to violate the nuclear taboo. the next argument is the specific type of cost-benefit analysis. Our type of cost-benefit analysis is necessary. Our evidence indicates that drones would lead to the best analytical tools because of the excessive review possibilities. Those best analytical tools are necessary to resolve the problems with the cycloptic eye that exists in the status quo, which is our best evidence. Terrorism is necessary. They have a link to the terror talk argument very clearly, but they do not have an impact to any of this. At the end of the 1 hour, ask yourself, what is the explanation for conflict here? Otherness is insufficient explanation for conflict. I read a piece of evidence on this in the 2NC. It is a bold evidence. They also we have to go out and kill certain terrorists because they reject a foundational norm of the system that is necessary to preserve the existence of that system, which is something that they have conceded outweighs the existence of people as a fundamental prerequisite to people being able to tell the stories and narratives. The breakdown of the nuclear taboo would eliminate that possibility. The horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki replicated on the entire global scope would eliminate the global perspectivism. The only possibility of resolving those terrorist attacks is drones. It's a complicated piece of machinery here.
I've never got how to work these stamps. I really like them, but I'm just terrible with them.
If I was good at geometry, it would be even easier to use, but
Adding all those angles. that would be this
Thank
high
you.
school.
I'm sure there's like some formula for all of it.
Tread.
I feel like I remember all those formulas, so I gotta take the GREs.
I know, right?
I'm so happy I'm not
Me too.
doing that.
My computer's died.
Oh no.
There's an outlet right behind. Yeah, I'm not gonna charge it. It was 100% when I came in, and now it's dead. They finally have a charger.
I only have my Mac charger.
So you have paper.
Yeah, we have
I'll do the 2 hour on paper, and then you can find a charger after the 2 hour.
You need a pen?
Yeah, that was. I got you. $2 laptops and 1 charger. Costas forgot his laptop at home, so I gave him the other laptop and the charger. But
Oh no.
last round I was able to get mine charged up to 100%. I was
Right.
like, really this debate.
We used to sound like one of our teammates, Dennis. He was like showed up a half an hour late for the Clarion tournament, and then half an hour into the drive, he was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. I don't have a computer. Can we go back so I can get a viewing computer?" Thought Kelly was gonna kill him.
Good boy, right?
Alright.
All good?
I think this is going to be a pretty easy app ballot. They say that their role of the ballot is to test the desirability of the app. However, this is a new articulation of their role of the ballot. I understand that he got a little bit flustered in the 2NC, but the 1AR answers would have changed drastically. Could have coherently articulated a role of the ballot. Additionally, this doesn't take out our role of the ballot. It only makes it easier for you to vote affirmative. Our role of the ballot, which was never contested, was our advocacy statement to imagine debate from the perspective of those that are unimaginable from the view of the self-station is a copy and I, which means that the desirability of our affirmative should be understood only through our role of the ballot, but via our ability to solve for our affirmative case. They have not contested our affirmative solvency to solve the 3 impacts that we outlined, or to change the way that or to make us more ethically relate to the debate, community in general, which means that this should be a pretty easy win for us. I don't know what other arguments they could get out of this. You should not do any more cross-applying roll of the ballot arguments for them here, because our roll of the ballot has been clear literally since the 1AC and was repeated again in the 2AC. The desirability of our app is desirable as long as we win that it solves our case arguments. Now, even if we don't win the roll of the ballot arguments, I think that they're in a pretty tough position when literally the last argument that he makes is that existence is is a prerequisite to being able to solve anything, and then conceding the Bauman evidence, which was one of the only things extended on case in the 1AR. The 2AR complains a lot about the lack of the 1AR argument application and then dropped the 1AR argument. The Bauman evidence says that drones create a moral distancing and ease of use that causes globicide. This is a 100% risk of an extinction impact, which outweighs a risk of causing nuclear terrorism, which might erode the nuclear taboo and then cause a global Hiroshima. We are at least, which are internal links that we've all epistemologically indicted. We are at least winning internal, or at least winning defense. I need that. We are at least winning defense against their impact claims, but there is not a single piece of impact defense against this claim that the use of drones causes extinction. Additionally, the warrants in this evidence are answers to particular scenarios that they've outlined. The first is that that drones do create a distancing, which means that it leads to the annihilation of the other. The second one is that this kind of these new kinds of drones that are going to be taken, the new kinds of drones that are being developed are ones that are going to be nuclear, which means that these also risk breaking the nuclear taboo. I don't think I need to do a lot of work there since it's completely dropped. Now, top of the line by line, they say that we can't apply the epistemology arguments to the case debate. Our argument, we're not going to apply the epistemology disad proper like we did to the other case debates, but our Shaw evidence still makes an epistemology indite, which is being extended through the entire debate.
And
which means The Shaw evidence says that you can't trust statistics that come from the state about drones because they cover up things. They have no mechanism for being able to override this. In fact, our Graham-Shaw-Actor evidence indicates that our affirmative is a prerequisite to being able to gain effective knowledge about this, which means that even if they win all of your case turns, the only way that you can evaluate it objectively is to do so through the lens of the affirmative, which means that it justifies an affirmative ballot. Now, they've conceded our ability to solve for case. That was above. I think it outweighs. This is debate about debate, which means that none of their impacts actually happen. In a world where you grant them your impacts, I think our Bauman evidence is a significant mitigator, but their actual content of our affirmative has not been contested. They've conceded that we have the ability to change the way that we relate to the debate space in a more ethical way. He says that that these impacts cause case turns, but then never explains what the case turn is. How does the case turn function? How does our affirmative make us relate to debate in a less ethical way? How does our affirmative render perspectives to the periphery instead of include them? Now, he says that we conceded the fog. The fog of war can't be lifted. That's the Wilcox-Graham-Shaw-Actor evidence. It applies the epistemology debate here and says that the view from everywhere is the illusion called for the Wilcox evidence. It's applied here by the 1AR and is an on-point answer that's vastly superior to the negative evidence on this issue. Also, he's conceding the argument that the Cyclopean eye can only be used and can only benefit those in the positions of power, which means that even if he's right that it allows for better mapping, for better warfighting, it only allows for those things for the United States, for the people that are already in power. It does nothing for those people that are already rendered to the periphery. The distinct and they said that they said that violence has been decreasing. This is only from the perspective of the dominant person again, and even if violence is decreasing, it does not mean that our affirmative still isn't unique or that we don't solve for any things. There's a link to the ocular centrism argument, which is an impact from the 1AC that was extended in the 2AC and the 1AR. When they say things like see a line of sight, it is the same discourse of ocular centrism that reinforces binaries and oppresses other people. Only the 1AC has a methodology to be able to solve for that. This is an external impact that might seem a little bit new, but this kind of rhetoric wasn't used until then. The status quo is not reflexive. If it was, then they wouldn't be using drones in the first place. And even if the status quo and drones are reflective, it doesn't do anything to change the debate space. They keep framing us as an ex-ante review. Maybe if we were, then they would have a link, but we are not a judicial review of anything. We read partial perspectives in the debate space as a way to rupture out of this dominant ideology. We don't end drones, which is the internal link to all of their impacts. Even if cost-benefit analysis is the best, then it means you vote for us because we can not only change the debate space, but we also avoid an extinction impact. The terror talk, the impact was the case debate, that when you frame terrorists in this way, that it proves that your negative project is one that is rooted in rendering perspectives to the periphery. They don't.
Protector.
Oh, right, which also links to the art.
Alright, see if I can find a white person to find me a Honestly, good debate. I voted AF. I think a couple of things are problematic for me at the end. I just don't have a really good sense of. I don't know if it's a matter of clarifying the link to the AF in terms of what happens post-AF, or if it's a matter of not being able to access a couple of advantages I think they're getting in terms of the role of the ballot argument, but also in terms of the kind of debate argument, and I'll talk about that kind of towards the end. The first thing is, I think the role of the ballot argument is unclear for me by the neg from the 2NC to the 2NR. And like your discussion at the top of the 2NC, the first thing I kind of wrote off to the side was 2 question marks, because it did seem to be a departure from what the 2NR arguments seem to be a departure from the 2NC role of the ballot. And so I looked back quite a bit at what I flowed for both, and I thought that, well, maybe the words of the 2NC were more complicated than you meant them to be.
Yeah.
And so the top of the 2NR, it's just the desirability of the AF. Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to spot you that really it's just about whether or not the AF is desirable, and you don't have to win that the role of the ballot is seeing the gays as being necessary to lift the fog of war, blah, 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 all that. Right? It's a desirability question. Is there an advantage that the AF gets that is outweighed by the neg, or do they get an advantage that outweighs anything you get? Okay, so it's a desirability question. I kind of spot that. But I am with the 2AR a little bit on this question at the top. But if it's a question about what you mean by role of the ballot, clean that up a little bit. In the world that I think it's just about desirability, I think the AF is ahead on the impact debate for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're bombing evidence that is the impact to the 3 advantages in their role of the ballot argument, I think is decent enough given the other problem I have, which is not being sure if the AF at the end of the debate would cause a decrease in drone usage, which to me seems to be the internal link to a lot of your impacts. And you've got some evidence that's okay on this question, but I don't think it's okay to a level of threshold that it means those impacts get kicked in. I also think that, like this is your Vladik evidence, I don't think that even if there's a risk that this review is such that it causes a decrease in the president's ability to use drones, that it reaches the level of the impact evidence that you're talking about. I also don't think there is a defensive answer on your part to the distancing argument that they make. And I do think that they have offensive arguments in both the 1AR and the 2AR as viewed through their role of the ballot argument, even just using your desirability standard. Like, I think they're probably winning some of the parts of their role of the ballot argument that you don't even really access. But even just using the desirability standard, I think that their evidence is ahead on the distancing question and what happens when drones are used and what drone usage allows in terms of distancing. And I think there at least needs to probably be some defensive answer back to that evidence.
Do you not think because I had that section in the 2NR where it was drones and the cyclopic view being that people who are operating drones have to see the faces of the people that they're striking. Just like a carpenter. I mean, and maybe it's like a card that you didn't call for. But.
And maybe when I actually read it, because I'm about to talk about that. And maybe my use of offense, defense is different than what you're conceptualizing it as. I think that's an offensive argument that you have.
Sure.
I think their offensive argument is better than that.
What is
I think
their
bombing evidence that talks about. I'm going to get to that in a second. This starts with their role of the ballot argument in terms of the isomorphic argument. And their evidence talks about when you create a geographic way of seeing and targeting individuals, that the only way you can actually do that in a manner that doesn't cause extinction is it has to start from an ethical standpoint of engaging politics with the other that you're gazing upon, distancing yourself from. And I don't know what is unique about the NEG's concept of drone usage that allows that to happen. I do think their evidence is a little bit more new. What?
Have a camera on them.
The argument about the distancing that occurs, though, that even if that camera, there's a distancing that occurs from the other. This is where I think
But our carpenter evidence is man, there are drone pilots that are kind of fucked up mentally based on the fact that they have to strike these people.
Okay.
So like
What is that?
they obviously have to relate to the people that they are striking by seeing them.
Well, I'm not sure that relationship argument is even necessary for you to win some sort of impact to this. And I'm not sure if that relationship argument really answers back the distancing argument that their vomit evidence talks about. But even if there's a risk that that's true, I don't think there's a couple other things I'll talk about, and if they don't answer that question, we can go back to it.
Sure.
So their isomorphic argument about geographic way of seeing and targeting, I think, is pretty good offense for the AF. Well, I don't think the explanation of extinction and the role our view of the other plays is extremely well argued by the AF. I do think those arguments are there, and that in terms of the impact calculus on extinction being a possibility is less so with the neg. And then to me it comes back to this question that I raised at the beginning, which was what does the AF do that stops the ability of journalists? So even if you're right,
Sure.
even if your question is correct about, well, then we can have a relationship because they see these people, what has the AF done that prevents that from happening?
Fair. If you think that we haven't won a link.
Yeah, and so that's
Just like sort of.
for me. That's kind of where I keep coming back to because I'm just not sure
Fair. Okay.
that's
You think that we
the
haven't won a
case.
link.
I do think the AF. Then the other thing is that I think is problematic for you. I think the AF disrupts the way the gaze plays out, and they're accessing some of this debate argument that's going on, and how we talk about people and not reducing them to calculable numbers of warfare. And so I don't really think that's kind of addressed in the 2NR. And so it's not even more so about like the policy of drone usage post the 1AC or post voting AF. It's the how do we have that discussion about these folks, and that's the better way in which to relate to them. So this I think gets back at your camera equals we can have a relationship, but the argument about in the discussion of that policy and not reducing people to numbers and instead accessing this how we talk about them and not reducing them in that way is a more ethical framework. And so then I think they kind of have this like ethical advantage, and I'm not even sure what that really is, but to me it seems like I don't think there's a link, and I think that they probably have a risk of extinction. And even if I were to spot you with some of the other desirability claims, then I come back to this like how we discuss this policy and the debate about debate stuff, which I just don't think you're talking about really in the 2NR. I think the stuff you do talk about in the 2NR you're pretty good on. But that seems to be like another part of the role of the ballot argument that doesn't really get fleshed out. And I thought the 2NR choice was smart because I thought given the 1AR that you could sit on a couple of these things, but I am with her on the top of the 2AR when she says, a lot of this stuff that we possibly may not win is irrelevant because the stuff that Michael does extend at the top of the 1AR is things that aren't addressed really by the 2NR. And that's partially part of that role of the ballot, part of the gaze argument, part of the ethics argument that I think that they get, and then the risk of extinction argument, which I don't really have.
I mean, their internal link to the extinction arc is like the distancing arc. So I guess I felt like I answered that more.
Well, but I think
than
that
you did,
I think
so
the
that
risk.
sort of
I think the
makes
risk of that argument, given the nature of the impact, is bigger than the risk that you win a link to the distancing argument, the relationship that can be created.
Sure. Okay.
And even the risk of that impact maybe is bigger than the
How
impact.
do you think we had to go about winning a link to reduced drone usage for this permit?
I'm not sure that
I mean, like
that's the question.
That's
again.
like
Do
sort
I
of
think you need to do
my-
it, or how do I
here's-
think you need to do
how
it?
do you
Because I think
think-
that's
that's like sort of, I mean, my frustration with this debate in just like debates in general at this point is like the AF should have to say drones are bad on this topic at some point, and like the fact that AFs can just like get away with being like drones are bad right now, but we don't eliminate drones.
The first thing that kind of struck me in the debate was there were like two places in different cross sections where you just kind of were willing to give up on a couple of arguments, and I think maybe in this debate, tied in with the fact that you have a top Cali argument early on in the cross section, you shouldn't have been so quick to just say, okay, well maybe you don't get rid of all drones, but okay, because then I think you can make that argument that hey,
Can I confirm it's in?
it is not in because I didn't have it in my inbox and I just asked Gary to send me a new copy of the
Oh no.
And he replied, I will do this now.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Because I think that that's a point in the debate where you can posture and say, look, you have to defend that drones are bad, because if that's this, you make a stasis point argument, like even if you don't have to defend a USFG policy implementation, you have a stasis argument about a point of contention. If the AF contention is drones bad,
Sure.
you should have to defend drones bad, we get to defend drones good, and that's where the debate can come down. And then it becomes a question of whether or not drones are good or bad, and you may be ahead on the question of drones are necessary to kill some terrorists.
Sure. Do you know? I mean, what is unpersuasive? I guess about our link argument as it is currently constituted.
That they would decrease drone use, because it seems like you keep talking about this.
I mean, it seems
ex
like
ante nature of the
even
AF,
even if
that to me seems to be policy based.
sure, I guess.
And I'm not sure that's a defense that they ever make in the debate. And that's
I
part of
guess
the argument.
what is the we need? I mean, it seems like if I'm explicitly conceding there are like we need arguments to topicality.
Mm-hmm. Like what ones?
Like the first one that's like we restrict drones. It's like the top argument of the YR. So I'll look at it again. We affirm a restriction in the manner in which we use drones.
in an exceptional way, and then she goes on to make this argument about that exceptionality being the discussion of, and then she makes this kind of roll of the ballot argument. She says USFG fuels colonialism. That's kind of a red flag. They're not defending a policy implementation of restricting drones, but rather restricting drones in a way that creates an exception to that rule.
So you think that's sort of
Is that an incorrect? Is that an incorrect?
Actually, just decreasing the exceptional use of drones, but very similar, right? Like,
Yeah,
they're
those are
functional.
So I think that
I just need like a sort of like T argument, like sort of our like more militant version of the T argument.
yeah, just like
about-
I mean, I think you can make this with the stasis argument that okay, there has to be a stasis point, and if the stasis point is drones bad, if the stasis point is desirability of drones.
Sure.
You got your roll of ballot question. They're out there direct. The drones are desirable. They've got a lot of reasons why they're not, but you may be ahead on the impact argument of drones are desirable because we have to kill some terrorists.
Yeah.
Because I like think about this like Hiroshima example you give, like if this goes global.
Yeah.
But I'm not, because I don't think you're winning the link. I'm not sure. But if you win this, like even a risk of the stasis point argument, then it's easier to say to them at the end of the debate, look, you may win some debate about debate stuff, you may win some other stuff, but the one stasis point that was created was desirability of drones. They've won an impact to drones
Yeah.
desirable.
That's good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna finish this film this out real quick before they come back.
I just have one question about
Yeah, no
that.
problem.
Go ahead.
Hey. See, I said before they come back, and there they are.
You know what I was thinking about before this tournament? Can't hit any wake teams.
Right. No AF-rounds against weight teams.
They had 4 AF-rounds against weight teams.
That's sort of
One after the other.
By the end, it was just funny.
Zent.
Alright, thanks.
Do you think that a good example to sort of clear up that discussion earlier would be to give an example of a policy F that would be topical under their interpretation but would not link to their case offense? Like if I'm like, we could read ex post facto review. That would cause a restriction on the executive branch's use of drones. It would not get rid of drones. None of your case offense would link to that.
But
You
they do have
said
case
so in
off,
the
but they do have
comment.
case offense that says even that restriction might slow down the ability to go after
Fair enough.
terrorists.
That would definitely
Yeah,
stop.
so that
Right,
would
but just
still-
none of the like the trade off. And is that like an okay distinction?
I mean, it's an okay distinction. It seems like the offense they're going for is the necessity to be able to go after terrorists quickly, and they can make this argument that would slow that down, obviously.
Gotcha. Fair enough. That was I only used that example ex post facto because that was the counter plan, and they said it avoided the case solvency earlier in the debate. So like, what about like one that actually would avoid the case turns? So like, Obama shouldn't be able to use drones immediately and should have to at least notify Congress, right? Like literally immediately. He's got to wait a day or whatever, right? Like that's a restriction on the president's war powers authority. It wouldn't link to any of the case offense. Would that like clear up this like whole you have to eliminate all drones in order to be T thing?
I mean, if that's their stance, that you have to eliminate all, and they spot you that defense. Like, I don't think a team that's good on this question is going to spot you that defense as a possible topical interpretation of the president's ability to use drones being restricted, because it seems like it's such a minuscule restriction.
Gotcha. So if I think of a good example that's much better than the one I can come up with off the top of my head, I'm sure that I can think of an example of a topical F that would link to this case offense. Would that be an efficient way to demonstrate the problematic notion that one cannot engage in a clash-based debate if the affirmative doesn't link?
They can make the argument, though, that they get different kinds of offense against the
Yes. Yeah.
and that as long as there is a policy implementation that has a stasis point of departure for them to gain some access to offense, it doesn't have to be this offense. For example, they're never going to stand up in a debate and say, we have to have the ability to say, you stop drones, and because that's going to be the only offense we can ever get in a debate is the neg. They're going to say we can get other offense. You give an example of another AF, they'll be able to get offense against that AF in some different way. But yeah, I think you're kind of splitting hairs on the whole notion of what they went for in this debate versus what a topical version of the AF would look like. So you're right, there are topical versions of the AF that wouldn't link to some of their case offense. It seems like most of them would at least link to a case offense that deals with slowing down the ability to use drones.
It certainly would, which would actually probably be subpoint B about why it's predictable anyway, right? Like that seems like an
You
argument.
could say that,
for
yeah,
us,
you
isn't
still
it?
have that ability to use that offense, yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. I just want to make sure, I mean, because I'm not, like, obviously a secret policy debater or whatever, so I wanted to make sure that there's not something I'm dramatically misunderstanding about, like, the resolution or something, right? Because it seems to me
Not about
like
the
there's
res,
nothing
I
in
don't
the
think.
resolution that says that we have to defend any drone. Okay, cool.
No, I don't think the resolution says you have to defend any drones. I think they could win an argument that says if drones is the stasis point, you have to defend drones
Drones
bad.
are in some way bad, right?
We get drones
Although,
good,
wouldn't they be,
which may even be faster
what about
drones.
counter-interpretation restrictions at this point of stasis? We didn't even have to say drones are bad, we just have to say restrictions are good. The res doesn't say decrease.
You
Right.
could say that. I mean, that's a
Okay,
debate
cool.
that could be had, yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know, like, our school wrote a topic paper, like, makes sense in terms of, like, what the topic was, that would be the interpretation that the point of stasis would be about the restrictions, not about the drone policy.
I mean, a debate could be the stasis point should be the word resolved.
Yeah, for sure, I mean, right, and that makes
So,
sense. It's not like I'm
you
trying to
kinda
be like, I am right, or
Right now, you can kind of
whatever.
reduce this down to any part of the res. It doesn't even have to be about the res. It could just be literally drones bad, which isn't necessarily in the res, but maybe a subset of the res. And so, but if it comes down to what a stasis point is for them, then they get to say, well, then you have to defend one side, we get the other. And if it's good versus bad, we get to say bad.
Bears on the question of theoretically predictable negative ground, so I'd have to justify why that was yet.
Do you have other questions?
No.
Do you think of anything else? Or anybody
Yeah.
has anything else? I think there's dinner
Yeah.
now. I'm not sure.
I'm sure that we have.
There is dinner.
Okay.
I don't know where